Welcome, everybody, to the latest episode of the Amateur Theory podcast. Like always, we got a great episode for you today. We're going to talk about the new Mortal Kombat trailer, which is kind of exciting, and we're going to talk about the new HBO exclusive, also you could see it in theaters, Judas and the Black Messiah, which was a very, very cool movie. So, but before we start with that, just a little bit of a shameless self-promotion. You see, my kind of side job, besides my full-time podcast duties, obviously, this is
one of your many side hustles.
Right. No, I write for my university. I write for University of Maryland, and my writings are for the business school, so they tend to have like a business or like a marketing lens is usually what I'm writing from. But this time I got to write an article that was about Cobra Kai. If you watch this podcast regularly, you know I'm a huge fan. So I wrote an article about Cobra Kai, and I thought I would just seeing that it's somewhat related to this. I figured I'd just talk about it briefly. I'll include the link to the article if you're interested in the description of this video if you want to read it. But essentially, it was just talking about how, so Cobra Kai started out as a YouTube exclusive. So it was part of YouTube Red at the time, now YouTube Premium. And then it got sold to Netflix. And it was just kind of talking about like why that happened. And the big reason is, to kind of cut to the chase, is that people don't go to YouTube to watch TV shows. They go to watch YouTubers, right? Like it's just not the kind of content that people want. So even though, it was a good show even back then on YouTube, it just wasn't selling subscriptions, because when you don't get a YouTube premium subscription for shows, you get it to get rid of ads. Like that's the real reason anyone's going to subscribe to YouTube. So it didn't make sense for YouTube to spend money producing these highly scripted shows when it wasn't actually making anybody subscribe to the service. So they sold to Netflix. And Netflix, of course, was perfect for it because they're all about the 80s nostalgia. We've all seen Stranger Things. So Cobra Kai was perfect for their kind of business model, and it became one of the most successful shows in the service. So if that sounds interesting to you, that's a little, kind of synopsis. It's a little short, fun article. If you want to read it, again, the description will be, or the link will be in the description.
Yeah, and that's the thing. How many people even have like YouTube Premium?
It is 20 million compared to 200 million Netflix subscribers.
Yeah, I was just going to say, no one I know has YouTube Premium, but like most people I know like have access to Netflix. So,
and the thing is I feel like most people who have YouTube Premium, I don't know, I didn't actually research this, but it's just a hunch, because they advertise the free trials for it so much. How much you want to bet? At least half, if not more, of those subscriptions, I wonder if are free trials, because they're like, every time I go to YouTube, it's always the first thing I see. Like, do you want a YouTube Premium free trial? Every time.
And YouTube Premium, isn't one of the benefits that there are no ads, things like that?
Yeah, that's why people get
it. It could be that 10 million of those people are paying for it for a different reason.
Yeah, I'm sure. Even if I've done the free trial for YouTube Premium to get rid of the ads, and I didn't even know that Cobra Kai existed at the time. I think it did, but I just didn't know about it. So, and I mean, I love the show. I totally would have liked it, but even if I had known about it, I don't know if I would have chosen to watch it on YouTube anyway. Like, it's just not how I watch shows. I just don't think to do that.
Yeah, no one goes to YouTube to watch like shows. Whereas when you go on Netflix, you're very specifically going to watch a show or a movie. But YouTube, yeah, people just use it for like music half the time, and the other times like YouTube personalities or whatever, or ASMR.
The big third appeal to
or like temporarily stopping the game they're playing to watch somebody else play that game. That's what YouTube is. That's it. There isn't anything else there on that platform.
Oh, by the way, you know how Rule 34 is a thing? I want to create a new rule like 35 or 36 or whatever, depending how many there are. Whereas If something exists, someone's done an ASMR version of it.
Well, on that note, let's talk about this Mortal Kombat trailer, which just came out about a week ago. And JL, I'm really curious about your perspective because I know you are a fan of the original 90s
the original
Mortal
movie.
Kombat movie. So how did this trailer look in comparison to that?
Well, this is the thing. I am a fan of the original movie because I saw it when I was like 10 years old. So the perfect age to watch something like that. This looks... It kind of just looks more of like the same, just updated. I mean, a big thing I think back when the original movie came out was that it was like a PG-13 movie for this like video game that was known for its
famously rated M.
Yeah. But it looks like this movie. I mean, the trailer we watched was Red Band, and I mean there were like swear words and like blood and gore. So I guess this is like more hardcore, like true Mortal Kombat is. But I mean,
they're sticking to the true plot of the game. There is a tournament called Mortal Kombat.
Mortal Kombat, like heavily venerated for its fantastic plot and just intricacy of the storyline. I mean, yeah, it's just an excuse to have people fight. I mean, as long as you have like cool fight scenes and like the base amount of characterization. Like this doesn't need to be War and Peace, but make like the characters just like engaging and then have them fight and have the fight scenes be cool. And that's really all you need for a kind of movie like this. I mean, it's a movie based on a freaking fighting game. Like what are you supposed to do?
Yeah, I feel like the only job of this movie is like the commercial at least sold to me that the choreography is going to be pretty cool. Okay, so that's 70% of the job they needed to do. All you need to do now is actually give me a reason to care about the outcome of any given fight, and I'm in. I don't know. I'm kind of excited. I'd like to see it.
Okay, so yeah, that's the question that I want to ask. We did this with the Kong versus Godzilla trailer. I think it's a good question for a trailer. Does this make you, having seen this trailer, does this make you more hyped, less hyped, or just the same as if you had heard it was a Mortal Kombat movie?
I think about just the same. I mean, the trailer is certainly not bad or anything. It was basically what I was expecting. Information, it's like, oh, there's this secret tournament, and then it introduces all the characters. It's like, I'm Liu Kang, I'm Kane, that's Sub-Zero. It's like, this is exactly what I was expecting, and that's fine. I mean, because that's what this franchise basically lives on, these characters that just like punch each other into like a bloody pulp.
I had pretty much the exact same feelings. What about you, Adam? Did this make you more hyped?
Cautiously put me in the more hyped category here. I don't know. It's like the only way that this, when it comes to video game films, I feel like you can often tell in the commercial that this is a lower class of film, this genre. It always comes through, right? And yet this is one of the few video game movies that I feel like is like, obviously trailers are supposed to get you interested, right? But it didn't do anything to make me think that it would break its promise, if that makes sense. So yeah, I don't know, kind of interested. I'd like to see it.
Before we leave this segment, I just want to go on a little mini rant because I just bought Mortal Kombat for Switch, the physical copy, and it requires a download when you put it in the cart that is bigger than the memory for the entirety of the Switch.
What?
Like, why would you do that? Like, don't even sell me the cart. Don't even pretend that there's anything on this thing, right? Like, if you're basically downloading the entirety of the game, it's just for show. And then you have to download like an extra external hard drive, which is going to be completely filled up by Mortal Kombat now. I can't believe. And I felt so scammed. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do with this game. I don't know if I'm going to like actually invest in spending like some giant SD card just to fit this. Like, is it even worth it? I don't know.
I'm sorry. This begs the question: what's in Mortal Kombat that could possibly be that large? It's just Mortal Kombat. Like, what?
I'm used to having to like delete some games to make room for new games. Like, but like I could have deleted my entire library, and it was not big enough. I couldn't believe it. Like, I could not believe it that it took that much space. This is unbelievable.
Gotta fit that library of different temples in different parts of the world. Like, what's causing the size? I'm sorry, it's killing me.
It's because there's a huge soundtrack and all the files are in like super lossless quality. Like, they're all like FLAC files.
Pristine.
That's what the
Mortal Kombat sounds.
And you know what? So I also have The Witcher 3. The entire game is on the disc, on the cartridge. It doesn't need a single download for The Witcher 3. But then Mortal Kombat needs the entirety of my Switch's memory in addition to the cart.
Two of those characters look exactly the same. They're like different color vest, isn't it? Like,
I know, like it's like the blue ninja or the yellow ninja. Come on.
Yeah.
Anyway,
hey, their costumes look a little different nowadays. We've got fancier graphics.
But okay, moving on to the main content, the big movie we all saw, Judas and the Black Messiah. Starting as we always do with a spoiler-free top line. How did you feel about the movie? Like it, dislike it? Top reasons why.
So I'm gonna throw out a easy recommendation here. It's just good at everything it does. It's paced in kind of an exciting way, kind of almost like a noir kind of political paced kind of film. The acting is phenomenal. The script is good. It's got a really creative use of the soundtrack, I feel like. I don't know. I'm just thinking back on it. It just didn't feel like it was bad at anything it was trying to do. So, like that.
Yeah, I also want to call special attention to the acting, particularly the lead. Just did such a killer job at being like this, because like this was a very charismatic person who's able to like amass a movement around him, right? So you better be like real charismatic in your role, and he killed it. Like, actually, like he seemed like the kind of person like, yeah, I'd go to a rally with this guy. Like, why not? So it just I was to me he was the and actually I would say the agent and the also the person who was the double agent guy were also stellar.
Yeah. Daniel Kaluuya is Fred Hampton is fantastic. Like, when he gives the speeches in the movies, like, you feel like energized too, just as an audience member watching the film. And I also really like, and the other lead, Lakeith Stanfield as the FBI informant. He's certainly good too. Like, he holds his own against an already like incredible performance. And actually, if I have a criticism of the movie, I wish I could have seen, I think, more just between them. And I don't know, I don't know how valid this criticism is, because I think I kind of wanted maybe a more like tighter script. Like, this seems kind of like stretched out and thin, which isn't necessarily a bad thing depending on the intentions of the filmmakers. But I wish I could have seen more of, I think, their like relationship, like build-ups. I mean, like,
Yeah, fair
you know
enough.
it's going to happen because, well, it's based on history and just from the title of the film. But
I think that's the danger of all like biopics or historic things that are based on history is that you want to span all this time, right?
yeah,
It's like, the interesting beats happen in, they don't all happen in succession necessarily. So how do you kind of write that while still maintaining a tight story and not making it seem as if like these are all disparate events, like these are all related?
yeah, it's hard to do. And I just want to say, like, it's not that big of a problem at all for me. It's like this is a fantastic movie. You should definitely watch it. Gets my recommendation. That's like if I had to like come up with a criticism, like that's the one thing I could think of.
I think that one of the things that really drew me to this movie is that. So I can see where you're coming from. That this is really doesn't feel like a deep dive into a character at any point in the film.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the things that maybe impressed me was kind of how economical they were able to convey certain motivations in certain parts. I felt like a lot of scenes were playing a lot of different roles for a lot of different characters in this movie, and so I can see how that would make it kind of come across as maybe not quite as in depth as maybe it could be. But at the same time, I kind of also admired it for that same thing. Admired that they were able to do so much with so many things happening. We still kind of got a sense of the arc of both characters without even really going super deep into them. So yeah, I don't know. I liked it.
Yeah, I'll say that the pacing is admirable because I think that if you had made it, I think you could have had more kind of one-to-one conversations between different characters to flesh them out. Like you could have done that, but then that would have added to the runtime to its detriment, I think. I think this is like a very, very good length. Like it, yeah, everything happened at a fairly brisk pace. Every like scene had a purpose. It wasn't just, you were learning something every scene. I guess that, I don't know how, if it was done well, I'm sure you could make it a 3-hour movie and still be good, like anything. But I appreciated its length. I thought it did what it did everything it needed to in the time span you gave it to you.
Yeah, I'd agree with you about the pacing. This is a hard movie to get like bored with because it's just kind of always moving along. Which is yeah, like the movie's I think a little over 2 hours. It doesn't feel that length because there are some movies that are that length and it feels like twice as long as it really is.
Yeah.
But this like it's got a very good flow. Like you just like okay. It's kind of a rhythm to it almost.
So this is once again sounding like all of us are recommending. We need to watch a better movie again sometime.
Yeah, we should. We've been watching too many good movies. I'm just sick of all of this quality, man.
We'll see. But yeah, no, this movie is great. Totally, it's interesting from both a movie standpoint and also it's just a piece of history that I think is just not as covered as other time periods. Like how many World War II movies are there? How many, Civil War? Like there's a million things that we all know about. This is something that is I learned stuff. Like I learned, and if you look at how historically accurate it is, it's obviously takes some liberties, but it's not too far off of the reality of what actually happened, and it's very interesting.
Yeah, it's a pretty relevant movie to like what's going on nowadays. There's definitely lots of parallels to draw. Like obviously, like I think that's a big reason why the movie was made. So yeah, watch. Yeah, like we all recommend it. Like go watch it. Like just for like the performances of the two leads alone. Like that alone sells the movie, I think.
Yeah, I believe it'll continue to stream on HBO into March. I don't remember the exact date, but it's maybe like mid-March it'll be gone.
So not too long after the release of probably our podcast. So
I'll try
get
to do
on.
this quick. But so with that, that is going to be the end of the spoiler-free section. So if you have not seen the movie, want to, give it a watch, but come back because you won't want to miss this engaging discussion we're about to have. So the first thing I thought would be interesting to talk about would be the politics of this. When I was just kind of like researching the movie a little bit, I saw a New York Times article, which I couldn't read because I don't subscribe to the New York Times, so it was under a paywall. But the headline was "The most radical politics in a Hollywood movie ever," is what it said. And I was thinking about it, and I think I might agree. I can't think, especially when the radical politics, you're supposed to like empathize with them. Like you're supposed to agree with the radical politics. The radical politics are not the bad guy. They're not like something that the hero has to oppose. So like that was, because I mean, there is some radical stuff here for sure. We're talking about like cop killing. We're talking about Marxism. Like it's plenty radical. But yet they still come out looking better than the FBI agents who are trying to sabotage them.
And they come across looking better than J. Edgar Hoover.
Yeah.
You don't have to make much of an effort there. I feel like.
There's multiple scenes where like the FBI agent has to convince the informant that what he's doing is right. Right. There's like a scene where like he's like, oh yeah, they're just like the KKK.
Yeah, that's a line that gets repeated.
Yeah, and like there is he is talking about like killing cops and stuff. So like on the surface level, you could see that maybe that comparison being made, but as you get to know the characters and their motivations and their struggle, it just becomes clear that is like not at all comparable, and that is just an excuse. And it really kind of you have a mask off moment when the Hoover asks the agent.
Yeah,
right? He's like,
"What would you do if your like daughter like dated a black man or something?"
Right, exactly. And he's like, we can't have that in America or something like that.
It's like, who's the KKK, right? And actually, what he says there is actually super relevant. He's like, what's at stake is our like American way of life. Because I think that is where the heart of the theme of this movie is what does it take? What is actually necessary for real positive change? And all throughout the movie, we have kind of like this FBI informant who's being torn because he keeps hearing from the his mentor, FBI agent, so to kind of speak, about okay, I sympathize with the struggle of like black people, I guess, and this is, but there's a right way to do it. There's a right way, and the Black Panther Party are terrorists. Okay.
That sounds really familiar to things I'm hearing these days.
Yeah. So there's this kind of idea that there's kind of the normal, the American way of life, like Hoover is saying, and that there's kind of maybe this kind of like this liberalism is really just kind of a facade for what is undeniably just kind of like this racist status quo. So what is real change? Real change occurs because of people who are prepared to make sacrifices and to be brave. And the entire time our character, like Lakeith Stanfield's a character, is afraid. He's afraid to do the right thing. Yeah, which is kind of interesting because what I feel like there's kind of a similar conflict in Fred Hampton here about what sacrifice or what is change, what is actually like courageous change as well. So I don't know. I felt like it all worked together really well, and it.
Yeah, and there was a really interesting dynamic where all like the most radical violent acts are all done by the FBI as subterfuge. So like just as a couple examples, the kind of like the double agent tries to get the Black Panthers to, like, was it blow up something?
Blow up City Hall.
Yeah, blow up City Hall, and they were just like, "Are you crazy? Like, we're not going to do that."
Yeah.
And then also there was like different Black Panther members were like killing people or killing each other because they were informants or whatever. And then the FBI agent was like, "See, I told you they were bad." And then just to learn later that Hoover's like, "Oh yeah, that was our guy. Our guy."
Yeah. They were behind it all along.
Our FBI agents are the ones that are killing. Yep.
And so like there's like a self-fulfilling prophecy where the Black Panthers become more violent than they were because the FBI is purposefully making them so that they can then kind of retributively attack them. And it's kind of a theme that every single time the Black Panthers do violent action, like there is like shooting of police and things in this, but it's always as kind of it's like a tit for tat. They never fire the first shot, so to speak. Like it's always because of something that was done to them. And then you have this kind of thing about this theme of the never-ending violence and kind of what's the solution to that. I don't know if the film really offers us an answer to that question, but it does show how toxic that can be. And because even to its credit, it does kind of show the police when they start, like Hoover just seems kind of like a bad guy, right? But the policemen are slightly more sympathetic when they start like calling these people terrorists because like their buddy died, right? And so there's just like a cycle of violence that happens that is really just coming out from a terrible system. And ironically, what could have stopped the violence is if you hadn't imprisoned the leader and they had kept doing things like the Rainbow Coalition, which was just protest, right? But they couldn't have that. So they had to quell it, and that quelling is what caused the violence.
Right. And so there's this idea that like the status quo is the violence, right? So you have like a figure like Fred Hampton who's kind of like representing a real change, right? And yet, the whole FBI tactics is, oh, this change is violent. The change is violence. But no, status quo is violence. That's what systemic violence is, I guess. Yeah. And yeah, it told it conveyed this message, but it wasn't at all even a little bit preachy. It was absolutely about these characters and the changes they were going through. Like kind of the change in Fred Hampton as he kind of grew, like he got a family, he started to really consider the implications of what he was saying and what kind of world what his real ultimate goal ultimately was. He wanted the hospital at the end. That's what he wanted to focus on, right? And then also the change in the FBI informant who starts to become more and more enamored with like the Black Panther movement, and yet the FBI has something on him, right? And then he ultimately has to make a choice. And a story does not require that your hero has to make the right choice, or your character has to make the right choice.
And I mean, just talking about the framing device of the movie, like we're kind of hearing this as like a confessional, right? Of years later. And then after he confesses about being this Judas, right? This kind of, he like kills himself the day after doing the interview, which shows that he like obviously felt very bad about it. The dinner scene at the end also kind of solidified this, that he was offered money and he at first resisted, but ended up taking the money in the end, along with like a gas station. That was the reward.
That's what Judas actually did too, right? In the Bible, didn't he like sell Jesus out for like
silver
coins or whatever?
Or something.
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, it's interesting because this movie, like you were talking earlier about, like it might be the most politically radical Hollywood film, but it is interesting because while the movie presents a lot of like radical ideas, it never like Adam said, it's not preachy. It doesn't necessarily push them onto you. It's just presented, and like, I guess, definitely not in negative light. I want to say neutral, but I mean, like, you can tell like where the movie's like politics lean towards. But yeah, I think they're presented in a very, they were woven into the story like very well, because it is the story, but you are being presented with these ideas, maybe almost kind of like subconsciously or whatever.
Yeah, and I mean, like, he did talk about like Marxism and kind of communism, but it was a little more surface level in terms of that. And I think that really the focus was on racial justice.
Oh yeah, you're not going to learn any theory watching this movie. It is not Das Kapital, the movie.
That being said, though, I mean, it does, like, there is a little slightly more than just saying like the word communism. Like, it is clear that they knew the political philosophies going in. And actually, I think that they probably just
I know the Black Panthers like studied theory and whatnot. Like, they were like a socialist movement. I mean, that's what even like Fred Hampton says at the beginning of the film, right? Like, we're not going to fight like white capitalism with black capitalism. We're going to fight it with socialism.
But yeah, it was a very, very good movie. What did you guys think about the relationship that with the girlfriend who got pregnant?
I actually kind of like those moments, and I like how it presented kind of what's the word I'm looking for here? Kind of like an inner conflict for Fred Hampton's character as well. He is like a leader, and he's like, yeah, I absolutely sacrificed myself like for this movement and this cause. But at the same time, his girlfriend's like, well, you have me and like the like baby I'm gonna have. Like, you have your family to worry about now too. Like, you can't just like sacrifice yourself like willy-nilly because.
But in the end, I mean, I mean, it kind of seemed inevitable. Like, it wasn't necessarily his fault. He didn't put himself in a dangerous position. The FBI like blew down his door and just like
they committed assassination. Yeah, it was clearly an assassination. Like, that's historical. I also thought that she was like extremely important because I feel like there can be a temptation to kind of like focus on him and then just have the audience, isn't it so sad that he died, and like show his like body in like some kind of like absurd Christ-like imagery. But instead it was about the effect it had on the people, he left behind, like on her. The last scene is focusing on her face, on that, and not.
In epilogue, it talks about how her and her son would eventually continue the struggle on to this day. Like, they still have like a I forget what the organization is called, but it's something akin to like it's not quite called the Black Panthers, but it has Black Panther in the name of the organization. I'm blanking on the full name.
It's like the Black Panther Cub or
something like that. But so they're still doing some kind of like they're still fighting for the cause. I think they had something to do with the making of this movie, so maybe this is part of that, kind of bringing to light this story that I think a lot of people don't really know. I was vaguely aware of kind of, I knew that the Black Panther movement, obviously because everyone knows that, but then also I knew that the FBI was kind of sabotaging them, but I didn't know the whole story. So this was really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I have very limited knowledge too. I mean, I knew about like Fred Hampton and his assassination, and I like knew that that's like how the movie would end. But like, other than that, like, I'm actually, don't really know much. So this was like, most of this movie was pretty like new to me.
Would you say that you could recommend this to anyone, or is there certain people that you would
Well, I mentioned before in this like spoiler-free video that I felt like it doesn't do things like in a way that is like, I mentioned before, it's got the pacing of just kind of like a political thriller. So I wouldn't say it's like it's the type of film you only show patient friends by any means. I think you could.
I think it's pretty accessible.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just entertaining enough. It's not necessarily like a movie you throw on at a party necessarily, but it's the kind of movie that like I do think this would have a broad appeal, despite its very poignant themes and maybe even because of them. This is not like some esoteric artsy film. Like this is totally.
This isn't. I'm thinking of ending things.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, and
Jesse
the boyfriend
Plemons
in I'm thinking of ending
Rolla.
things is the FBI agent in this film.
He's in a bunch of stuff, and he always plays the same creepy guy. He's got like that thing down. He does it well, so I'll give him. But yeah, overall, a very, very solid film that, I think I could recommend it to pretty much anybody. I think that anyone could come out appreciating aspects of this movie. So
yeah, and it's the director's, I think it's only his second film, Shaka King. And yeah, for like only your second feature, like it's a really well-made movie. And your first feature, I think their first feature was also like a stoner comedy. I don't know anything about it. I don't know if anyone's seen it, but it's just this is such like a 180 from that kind of material.
Well, I mean, if you can do it well, then why not?
Hey, yeah, maybe we'll start seeing more movies from this guy. But,
yeah,
right.
I mean, hope so. This was well made, so I'd love to see. I'd love to see this director make more films.
Same. But all right, that wraps up that. We'll end as we usually do with what we've been watching, and I have one that I want to talk about, so I'll start. Okay. I saw the most horrendous movie. Oh gosh, what's it called? It's the newest Ghibli movie.
I didn't know they had a new movie.
I know what you're talking about. I've seen it. I haven't seen the movie itself, but I've seen the little
unimaginably bad. I can't believe I'm blanking on the name. I'm Googling.
There's like
Did it just come out this year?
Like it's blanking.
It's very new.
Okay. Let's see.
It was the newest movie by Miyazaki's son, who has directed two movies previous to this. And
did he do Tales from Earthsea, which I've never seen, but I haven't heard good things about.
So he had the old worst movie of Ghibli, but this just the thing about that movie that was so bad was that
Earwig and the Witch.
Mediocre. What?
Okay.
Earwig and the Witch.
Yes. Okay.
Right.
So like that movie, Tales of Earthsea is like a mediocre movie, which for Ghibli is disappointing because they're usually so good. His other movie, which is like Tales from Poppy Seed or something, is also it's better than Tales from Earthsea, but it's still like one of the most generic Ghibli movies. This movie is straight up one of the worst things I've ever seen in my life. Like I couldn't even believe what I was watching. I could honestly even compared to some of the bad movies we've seen on this podcast, it was just so bad. So first of all, okay, this is one of the ugliest movies I've ever seen in my entire life, which is crazy because Ghibli is known for like beautiful animation. But this is like it's 3D animation, which I guess they just can't do well. It looks like a computer game from like the 90s. That's how just like horrendous this looks. It's just disgusting. And the movie basically consists of so if you've ever seen Kiki's Delivery Service, right? This was just a riff off that there's this girl, she has to like work hard in like this adopted family. The difference between that movie and this movie is that in Kiki's Delivery Service, first of all, the work is like involves character progression. Like she is like learning as she does hard work. Also, it's not the entire movie is us watching her do chores. This movie, that is all that happens. And as they do chores, they talk about interesting things that are happening elsewhere as they do them. Like, oh, there's this crazy witch war or whatever. Wow. as you will watch her and she doesn't learn anything, right? Like from the beginning of the movie to the end of the movie, she just basically she learns at the very end that she can she has like these terrible step parents who are making her do all these chores, and then she figures out if she can compliment them, that they're just like really easily flattered, so that once she does that, they'll just do whatever she wants, and at the end she's like a spoiled kid who just pulling the strings of her.
This is the character development.
That's the end. But like that happens at the very end. Up until that point, she is just doing work, like like a really ugly room, like a witch room that just looks horrendous again. And then it's so bad. And then the ending is also one of the most just baffling endings I've ever seen. So nowhere in the entire movie, right, at every point is she like looking for her mom, because she's an orphan, right? So she's never like looking for her mom or like talking about how she misses her mom, right? So it has nothing to do with anything in the movie.
Okay.
But in the very end, there's like a doorbell rings. She opens the door, and it's like, it's her mother. The end. Why? Like, what did that have to do with anything? Like, it was just so. Like, oh man, I can't. It's just so horrendous. No one should ever watch it. It's not even funny, like in a bad movie kind of way. It's just bad. Like everything about it is just so bad. I can't even remember the last time I've been like this upset about a movie. Like maybe The Hobbit. Podcast. I'll have to go by how much I hate.
Why do you bring that up?
But
talk
this
about the
movie
Hobbit
was just
sometime.
Awful. It was. I hated it so much. So yeah, that was what I've been watching. A little rant.
Well,
what was it called again?
Earwig and the Witch.
Earwig and the Witch. Yep.
Even the name is forgettable.
All right. So, first things first. I watched a show that Braden recommended a little whiles back. This is the Midnight Gospels, which is pretty interesting. I thought that it would be just kind of a podcast, and then they were just animating over the podcast. That's what I had sounded like to me before.
It's like 80% that.
Yeah, and there is a big component of that. And so I was surprised that there was so much of a kind of a narrative progression in every single episode through the animation to what they were saying. And they even like sounds like they were dubbing lines just so they could tie into occasional observations on things that were happening. It's pretty funny often. But yeah, I really liked the whole series. There was one episode in particular that was talking about Buddhist philosophy and like a very interesting perspective on hope as kind of like an attachment to be kind of discarded in order to reach enlightenment, that I thought was very, very fascinating. So I've been thinking about that. I recently rewatched all of Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit right next to each other to compare the two.
Oh damn, all of them?
Huh? Yep. Well,
were they the extended editions?
They were not. Which is honestly for the best, because I have probably seen the extended edition of the Lord of the Rings more than I've seen the non-extended versions. But yeah, the seeing them side by side really the more I think about it, the more like baffled I get. Like these were the same, almost exactly the same teams working on these films, and then but one of them includes like a rubber bouncy barrel bouncing around and like spinning. One of them involves like a tiny little hobbit guy like throwing pebbles and just like
Right.
orcs just flying off every time they hit. I'm just wondering where it all came from. I don't know. I still think it was fascinating. So yeah, those are the two things I've been watching.
I think that's what makes me hate those movies so much. See, with Earwig, it was like, this is a Ghibli movie. I held that studio in very, very high esteem. So the fact that you made a movie this bad is like what upsets me. And the Lord of the Rings movies, I think, are some of the greatest movies of all time. And so to follow them up with something that I just is like a botched roller coaster ride of a movie for 9 hours is so like, it's migraine inducing. It's just horrible. There's a roller coaster on the waterfall, then the roller coaster with the gold, and the roller coaster with the wolves, and everything is just like, whoa, what are we doing? It's like camera shaking, like we don't know. Are we gonna? It's just all so stupid. Like the entire whole.
I kind of like that scene.
Yeah.
But well, I like the scene in the same way that I think that I like Wonder Woman 1984. Like it's fun. I'm not saying it's like great, like it's beautiful or anything, but it does make me smile.
But yeah, that's
we might have to go more in depth with these movies sometime. I don't know. It's been forever since I've seen them, though.
It's actually been several years since I've seen the Hobbit movies too. Actually, I've only seen them in theaters, so I haven't seen them since.
Well, I watched. This was based off of Red Letter Media's recommendation because they put out a video on this. But I watched The Kid Detective, which is fantastic. I loved it. So it's about a guy who, when he was a kid, was a detective. He solved a lot of mysteries and was well known for that. But now he's older. And he's kind of like, he's just not getting anywhere. Like he's solving like dumb stuff. Like a woman's like, "Hey, can you find my cat?" Whatever. So just he's not really getting anywhere, but he's still playing the detective shtick. But then someone comes to him to solve a murder, and that's kind of the direction the movie takes. I think you could get away with calling it a dark comedy. There's a lot of comedic elements, but then there's also like some pretty intense stuff at times too. But this movie's like right up my alley because it has those mystery kind of / noirish elements I really like. And it's and also the ending is perfect. It's one of those movies where like the last like 5 seconds I will always remember until like the day I die. But highly, highly recommended. The Kid Detective.
All right. Well, that is our podcast, and that's our time. I thank you for listening. And if you liked what you heard, please give us a follow on your service of choice, or if you're watching on YouTube, like I think most of our audience probably does, give us a like, subscribe, give us a comment. What do you think about these movies? Is there anything you'd like us to watch in the future? And until next time.
Until next time. Goodbye, everybody.